Brian Craig. And this is where MAGA comes to talk. If you're new, make sure you subscribe. Okay, so we've got the confirmation of Judge Jogn. So Judge Jogne's a permanent United States attorney. That is the final piece to Trump's puzzle of having his complete cabinet, staff, and administration in place. I know that the judge is going on in the Senate. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but that's separate from this. So now President Trump has everyone in place, right? This is it. Judge Jogn, she's the final piece. So what is Trump's plan with the Lawfare crew of people? What is his, it takes time, yeah. What's his long-term plan here so far as dealing with the Lawfare people? Now, of course, Jack Smith, there's an investigation been opened by the Senate into Jack Smith. You may have seen that. He was a real creep, and Jack Smith involved in all kinds of RICO actions, probably. The judge here in Florida, the federal judge appointed by President Trump, who is the judge in the trial of the second Trump assassin, that lunatic at the golf course, she sealed a whole bunch of evidence saying that it was a grave threat to national security if it were to become public, and she wouldn't even allow the defendant to have access to it. So what's that about? That's another thing I want to talk about in a few minutes. I'm going to get to the Lawfare plan first. So a lot's happening and a lot's going on. So there's a lot of things that have been coming out so far as investigations. We've been talking about them for the last 2 weeks. It started with the Tulsi declassifications. We had the Radcliffe declassifications, this Jack Smith. There have been some things that have come out from Kash Patel. So what's going on? And it does look like someone like Brennan looks terrified on television, doesn't he? When you see him on TV lately, he looks terrified. A story came out yesterday, looking into this, that Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were paid $2 million by the federal government. You know, there's all kinds of things that are being uncovered, people being investigated, people being uncovered for their lawfare actions. So here's a question I want to ask you guys. It's a common thing for people to say nothing's going to happen and no one's going to get arrested. And I really hate when people say that. I mean, you know, what a defeatist attitude. And I certainly don't subscribe to that. But there's a lot of big people here, and things are, you know, happening all over the place, with the latest being the Cotton investigation of Jack Smith. Which of the following do you think President Trump's goal is here? Okay? I got to think of 2 words. Hold on, let me think of 2 words so it'll be easy for you to. Let's see. Okay, there's 2 words here. Prosecute, and the second one's correct. Okay, those are the 2 answers to the question I'm about to ask you. Prosecute or correct. Okay, those are the 2 possible answers to what I want to ask you. What do you think President Trump's goal is? Not what he would like to do, what he's decided to do. Is it to prosecute and convict all of these lawfare criminals we're talking about, Jack Smith, Brennan, the whole crew, or correct the historical record? Not what his wish is, not what he would rather do. What do you think his long-term plan is? Correct the historical record, or prosecute and convict all these people? Well, people jumped in with correct right off the bat. Right off the bat, correct. Yeah, does President Trump want to correct the historical record or convict and prosecute? Is that his goal? Most people are saying correct. Yeah. If you prosecute, if you get them. I'm not asking what he wants to do, like what his wish is. We all want them all to go to prison. That's not what I'm asking. I'm not asking his wish, what his realistic goal is. What his realistic goal is in his mind. prosecute and convict, or correct the historical record. Now, both is a cop-out. No, both. Not what he would prefer, not what his wish list is, what he's actually doing. Most people say correct the historical record, and getting arrest and convictions of some of these people that are pretty big, you know, I think he's more concerned with the long-term historical record, and I'll tell you why I say that. And that does not mean, and when I say that, that does not mean that they're not going to arrest, try, and convict some of these people. And let me give you the best example that I can give her two. One with President Reagan, and one with President Nixon. I'll do the Reagan one first because that one's short. If you ask your average person, they'll and if they're familiar with Iran-Contra, that's a liberal. They'll tell you, oh, Iran-Contra was a big scandal, and Ronald Reagan was, exchanging arms for hostages, and he was such a terrible person. And that is the historical record. See, one thing you got to understand, as a student of history myself, history is written by liberal college professors. So that's a sad reality. All the history books that are mainstream, I'm not saying conservatives don't write history books, but the ones that are the textbooks, the ones that are the documents of American history are written by liberal college professors at these Ivy League trash schools that hate America and all this stuff. So when it comes to President Reagan, they've got two things that they slander him with in the historical record, that Iran-Contra arms for hostages was a bad thing, and trickle-down economics is voodoo economics. At the time, the Iran-Contra, the arms for hostages was not a bad thing that he did. You know, people forget, you would turn on your television on the weekends, and there'd be Americans held hostage by some Islamic terrorist somewhere. And sometimes they would kill them. They held them for years. Now, I'm not talking about the Iranian hostages. I'm talking about long after that, after they were freed. It was happening all the time. They were keeping people for years. They were torturing them. They were killing them. There was one United States colonel who was with the UN unit, and they captured him and they hung him. And they put the pictures out on television, and there was no internet then. And when he traded arms for hostages, he gave weapons, meaningless weapons, really, I mean, in the scheme of technology and everything, in exchange for getting American hostages that were being held by these Islamic terrorists released and returned home. That was a good thing, not a bad thing. It's remembered as a bad thing. The trickle-down economics, when I was in college, everybody has to take economics 1101 and 1102. I can't remember if it was in economics 1101 or 1102, but they had a whole section of the course in the college textbook about what a disaster trickle-down economics is. Well, that's complete BS. Trickle-down economics is the capitalist system, right? I had money in my pocket that I made that was trickled down to me, that I went to Starbucks, and it trickled down to Starbucks to buy this coffee, and then Starbucks, it's going to trickle down to pay their employees and pay the rent and pay the coffee being made, all those people. Trickle-down economics is capitalism, and history remembers Reagan as these terrible things. There's a third one with Reagan, that he had Alzheimer's when he was president. That's complete bullshit, okay? The Reagans brought in this guy, Edmund Morris, who wrote an incredible 2-volume biography of Teddy Roosevelt, which I've read, but it's a 2-part biography. The first part is his life up to right before he becomes president, and volume 2 is president to the rest of his life. Each volume is this thick. I have both volumes. I mean, I've read them both. They're very good. They hired Edmund Morris to come in, who's a real piece of crap, and he started writing that Reagan had Alzheimer's. And I know that's total BS because I watched on YouTube a couple years ago, and these are still up there. President Reagan did a whole bunch of interviews in his last weeks and months as president in the White House, in the residence, and he is as sharper than a tack. I mean, he was amazing. But history is written by liberals, liberal college professors, write all the books and all that stuff, all the textbooks, And they tell you that trickle-down economics is a terrible thing. He had Alzheimer's his last year or two of president, and that the Iran-Contra arms for hostages was a bad thing. So that's a bad thing. So if you're just joining, I'll take a pause. For those that are just joining, I asked a question at the beginning of the stream. What is Trump's goal with the Lawfare people? There's a lot of things coming up, and we're all very excited that Cotton is investigating Jack Smith and his crimes. Is President Trump's main goal prosecution and conviction of these Lawfare people, or correcting the historical record? And while we want them all to go to jail, I think his long-term goal is to correct the historical record. And I'm sharing how the liberals have slandered great Republicans like President Reagan. Nixon's another one. Nixon didn't do anything wrong, really, with Watergate. He was reelected in 1972, winning 49 of the 50 states. Imagine that. Imagine that. And then, like, a year later, he's out of office, embarrassed into resigning. That was a deep state media coup. And if you go back, I was talking about Ken Burns the other day, who makes these great documentaries. He's got a new one coming out on the revolution. He's a liberal jerk, but Ken Burns did a few years ago an incredible episode documentary series on the Vietnam War. And if you could go and find that, there was one entire episode of the Ken Burns Vietnam War documentary on the protest. And the peak of the Vietnam War protests, where they had them in every state, including Hawaii and Alaska, they were in every state, and was in the election season for the 1972 presidential election. And they had anti-war protest massively from sea to shining sea, with nonstop press coverage, television and newspaper, and it was just nonstop. And President Nixon went on in 1972 to win 49 of the 50 states. So what does that tell you? That the Vietnam War protest movement was bullcrap. It was not mainstream beliefs. If the mainstream country supported the Vietnam protest movement to get out of Vietnam, would would President Nixon have won 49 of the 50 states? Hell no. But and then they put this deep state coup against his vice president, Spiro Agnew, and then they went to Nixon to get him out, and they did that and plugged in Gerald Ford, who was part of the deep state. Remember, Gerald Ford sat on the Warren Commission, and which was very corrupt deep state cover-up of the Kennedy assassination. But history remembers, history books written by liberals has crafted this false history that everybody hated Richard Nixon. That's complete BS. No, he was elected. And 1960 is a whole other story, what happened there, which I'm not going to get sidetracked on. But he got elected in 68, then he came back in 72 after all those protests and won 49 states. And then the Vietnam War protests kind of evaporated after that for the most part. And he's gone down in history as the most hated president ever when he won 49 of the 50 states in 1972. So you can see how liberal historians who write America's history books distort the perception of these great people like President Nixon and their popularity. So I believe that while President Trump wants all these people to go to prison, and they should, Obama, Hillary, Brennan, Clapper, Jack Smith, all of them, okay, the Autopin, all these people, I think in the long term, he's more concerned with, I'm not saying he doesn't want them to go to prison. I want them to go to prison. You want them to go to prison. He most definitely wants them to go to prison. But I think President Trump, who, if you listen to him, he reads a lot of biographies and autobiographies of presidents. He talks about this, McKinley in particular, or not McKinley. I've heard him mention McKinley, but also because he was the tariff king, but probably why they killed McKinley. But I've heard him talk about Hoover. Hoover's another one who gets smeared by liberal historians, right? He was the Republican president before FDR. they blame him for the Depression, which is BS. But anyway, I believe President Trump, while he wants all these people to go to prison like you and I do, he's more concerned with correcting the historical record. He's a student of history. He's a student of American history. He's a student of presidential history. And he knows that if he does not correct the record, which is being done now, that the history books are going to write all these slanders about him that these trolls put in the chat room. That'll become the history if he doesn't correct it. So I think that's what his main goal is with the lawfare. Now that I've made my case, do you guys agree with my argument? Yes or no? I'm curious. Yes or no? By the way, my name's Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. And if you're new, make sure you subscribe. A lot of yeses for the most part. Yeah. And I want the historical record corrected as well. I know you guys do too. Yeah. I mean, we want them all to go to prison, and there's no better way to correct it than sending them all to prison. You mean Judge Janine? Yeah. Well, I am happy that so many agree. Yeah. A lot of agreements on that. Okay. Awesome. Well. But like I said, the liberal historians are like the trolls in the chat room. They don't care about the truth. They just write a bunch of BS and slander people. That's what they do. They just don't care. Liberals do not care about the truth. They don't care about the truth. It's really amazing how liberals don't care about the truth. They are very comfortable lying. Oh, man. Well, I'm glad to see so many people agree with my argument there. That's a good thing. It's a good thing. And that's important. It really is important. Now, Ron DeSantis did something, again, amazing. It's so bad. It pisses me off that Ron DeSantis let his wife whisper in his ear and get him to betray President Trump and all of us who supported him, because you can't trust Ron DeSantis. After what he did during the campaign, you can't trust Ron DeSantis, but he does good things. Yesterday, I was talking here on the stream yesterday morning that there's a liberal county here in Florida, Orange County. Orange County, Florida is where Orlando, Florida is, and it's where part of Disney World is. Disney World is so big, it's in 2 counties, Orange County and Osceola County. But anyway, Orange County, where most of Disney World is, and Orlando, Florida is, very liberal Democrat. And they passed a county law that said that their law enforcement in their county would not cooperate with ICE, and they would not send people to Alligator Alcatraz here in Florida. And the Florida attorney, I talked about this yesterday. And the Florida Attorney General and Governor DeSantis said that they were going to remove the entire county commission and possibly even prosecute them, because they said they were making their county a sanctuary county, and sanctuary counties and cities in Florida are illegal under Florida law. It's one of the first laws that was passed and signed into law by DeSantis when he became governor. And about 24 to 36 hours after that, no longer than 36, but closer to the 24, the county commission, that liberal sanctuary county commission, not only reversed it, they reversed their own law. And now they signed an agreement with ICE to turn the illegals in Orange County, Florida, over to ICE for deportation. And it's very important because that county not only is liberal, it's where Universal Studios Orlando is in that county, SeaWorld, there's a lot of tourist traps and attractions there, and of course Walt Disney World. And around, if you get off the Disney property and around Universal Studios and all this place, it's a big tourist area. So, and there's a lot of, service-related things, and there's a lot of illegals. That's why it's been a sanctuary community. There's been a lot of illegals there, a lot. And so ICE efforts in Florida, a lot of it is focused in on the Orlando Disney World area, and they were obstructing that. So look at what DeSantis got them to do on a dime. But can you trust DeSantis after his betrayal? You just can't trust. You just can't trust Ron DeSantis. It's unfortunate because he does a lot of great things. He's a very good. He's my governor. He does a lot of good Republican things. He's moving very hard to end property taxes in Florida, which I would love because I pay property taxes on my house. That'd be great. See, insurance costs because of some bad hurricanes has gone through the roof. My insurance is like 3-4 times what it was a couple years ago. It's very expensive. And people are having a hard time even selling their homes and maintaining their homes. And retirees are having a really difficult time. So, getting rid of the property tax would help out Florida homeowners a lot. Not all hurricanes are that bad, no. The one that hit the Gulf of Mexico a few years back did some devastating stuff. Vincent, thank you for the super sticker. I appreciate that. Vincent Smith, thank you, thank you. No. There's always been hurricanes. Anyone in the UK in the chat today? Anyone in England in the UK? When they act like hurricanes are new. When the British burned the White House, they lit the entire city of D.C. on fire, the British, the Redcoats, and a hurricane actually hit Washington, D.C., and the rains from the hurricane put out the fires that the British set in the War of 1812. There's not more bad weather. It's just we have more reporting of bad weather than ever before. We've had hurricanes in Florida forever. I've been through so many. Yep, the Gulf of America coast. It was the Gulf of Mexico then. No, it's true. It's true. A hurricane saved D.C. from the British burning it down. The Gulf of America. That's right. If you're new to my channel, make sure you subscribe. This is where MAGA comes to talk. But I'll tell you, you watch Obama's CIA director, Brennan, and you see him on MSNBC, he looks terrified. Doesn't he? Scotland, UK, welcome. He looks terrified. I think he does. Out of all of the Lawfare people, Brennan looks the most scared. Because, he knows he's on top of Trump's S list. Remember, Trump took a security clearance away from him in his first term. So he is most definitely does not like Brennan. What, you don't like grandpas? You don't have a grandpa? My goodness. Chris just gifted 5 memberships. Thanks for doing that, Chris. And remember, when you're a member, you get the access to the members-only emojis, and you get your name in a special color to stand out in the chat so I can see you better. But no, I do think that's what Trump's goal is with the lawfare. We're going to get some arrests. We're going to get some convictions. There's no doubt, and maybe we'll get a lot. But without the historical record being corrected, Trump won't see it as a victory. He needs that. He wants that. And we want it too. So, conservative historians have to start writing books. Yeah. Well, we need to get... I'll tell you one thing, though, that I'd like to see the government do. I'd like to see President Trump, and I don't know if he'll do this, but I believe Columbia University in New York City should be shut down permanently and dissolved. Columbia University in New York City is nothing more than a terrorist training camp, is basically. Would you guys agree with that? It should be completely shut the freak down. Not only should it be shut down, any professor there that is here on any kind of visa should have their visas revoked permanently and be deported. And not only should it be shut down and dissolved permanently, then they should just tear down the entire school so they can't open up a new school in there. I told you, it's a terrorist training camp. What good comes out? I mean, look at this. I can't even watch it. I saw a still. I can't watch it. The Hamas Israeli hostage that they have digging his own grave, and he's so thin he looks like a guy from Auschwitz or something. Did you see this? You know, and here you have Candace Owens over there with Tucker Carlson attacking Israel, and you see this. I can't even watch it. It's so horrific to watch. And you have Columbia University, which is just creating all this domestic anti-Semitism in this country. Mm-hmm. It's a terrorist indoctrination center, Columbia University. You know, it's a bad, bad, bad school, the worst. Yeah. How many of you guys agree with what I said about President Trump? They should shut down Columbia University permanently, tear it down, and plant a forest there. Just make it another park. Fill it with trees real quick. Declare it a national forest or something. Put as many trees. How big does it have to be a forest? Revoke all the passports of all the students and professors there and deport them permanently. Now, there's nothing good comes out of Columbia. It's crazy. It's like Taliban University. I mean, why would you have that there? Tehran U is what it is. And I don't even think that's a controversial statement. Do you guys? I don't think that's a controversial statement at all. I've talked about it before. The entire government's being run by Floridians. The president, the FBI director, the attorney general. Judge Jogn lives here. Not controversial at all. I think it's just common sense. Mm-hmm. Common sense. Oh, yeah. No, it's just a reality. I mean, why would, you know, why? And you can see the troll reaction to just that idea is evidence that it's a good idea. Mm-hmm. If you're new to my channel, my name is Brian Craig. This is where MAGA comes to talk. I host a morning show on the radio, podcast. When I'm in one of my studios, I take live calls on the program, which I stream here on YouTube. Now I'm just out in front of Starbucks having some coffee. But make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell, because when I'm live in the studio, I am taking live calls always. If you go through my videos on the channel here. Well, our country was saved on that day in Butler when the PowerPoint was on the other side of the stage than normal, so President Trump's head was facing the other direction, saved his life. That was a miracle. That was divine intervention. Going to the, because, you know, I know you guys, like me, watched all the Trump rallies, right? He went to that graph of the illegal invasion numbers of the different presidents in every rally in the election season, and that was the cue for the shooter, was when he went to that. That was his cue, but they had it on the opposite side of the stage. So when he was training for that, he trained for it to be on the other side of the stage, and that's what saved Trump's life. Divine intervention. Define greatness. That's a great question, Anna. It's very simple. It's a 3-word definition. Define greatness. Here's the definition. It's 3 words. Define greatness. Greatness is, 3-word definition, Donald John Trump. Donald John Trump. That's the definition of greatness right there. Great question. Thanks for asking that. You must be MAGA to ask a question like that. Yep, that was a great question. Mm-hmm. It's a great answer, too. Exactly. Mm-hmm. That's a great one. That's a great one. The heat of what we have, that we're under a heat advisory. We were under a heat advisory yesterday. We're under a heat advisory today from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. You're supposed to stay inside in the air conditioner. So I went out to lunch with my daughter yesterday. Went out to this nice restaurant where you can eat on the dock, on the water. It was so hot, we ate inside. Went to the restaurant specifically to eat outside on the dock. It was too hot. Mm-hmm. So I'll be inside in the air conditioning all day today. Yeah, if you're new, make sure that you subscribe, guys, and of course like the video if you don't mind. And watch all my other videos on the channel. But yeah, but I do think that's what President Trump's main goal is, and that's good. That's good. I'm so excited when they, although I don't want him to start doing it too soon, but I want him to, when his presidential museum here in South Florida they build, I'm going to be so excited. I will probably attend the Donald Trump Museum more than anyone. I told you my retirement plans are to retire when I'm retired as a tour guide at the Trump Presidential Museum, and I can think of no one better than to give people tours of the Trump Presidential Museum than me. I mean, I've been there through the, since before he came down the escalator, I was with Trump. I'd love to walk people through and share everything Trump with them. Oh man, wear my MAGA hat. I'm sure they won't mind me as a retired. I'll be an old man in a cane with my Make America Great Again hat. Mm-hmm. Yep. I'll be in an electric scooter with my Make America Great Again hat giving tours. I'll do it. And believe me, I'll make a lot of vlogs of it. Oh yeah. It was oh yeah. No, I mean, we're just so lucky. I want this entire term to go by. A lot of times you want time to go by fast. I want this term to go by slow as can be. I want the 4 years to feel like 50. I want to savor every moment of this term because things are going so well. I mean, we literally got our country back. I was talking to my mom. My mom is retired. She's a widow. She's retired. And I was talking to her yesterday about the $6,000 tax deduction she's gotten on her Social Security from President Trump this year. I said, Mom, you're going to get a big sizable return. President Trump just signed the $6,000 tax deduction into law for seniors. She just fully retired. She was like semi-retired and was working part-time. So she just stopped her job. So she's like fully retired. And yeah, $6,000 deduction on Social Security. On top of the deduction seniors already get on their Social Security. So I said, Mom, that's a lot. And she's excited. She's like, oh, that'll pay my property taxes, which hopefully DeSantis will rid us of, my homeowner's insurance.
it's pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. The whole idea that they tax seniors on Social Security is criminal. They take that money away from you your entire life, right? And then they pull that crap. Mm-hmm. Everything Trump's doing is exciting this term. You know, on one episode of my podcast this last week, I went through the tax cuts and the big beautiful bill for average people, and I was talking to I went to lunch with my daughter at this restaurant I was talking about earlier, yesterday, and I was telling my daughter that I said, you know, you get the tax deduction on your interest payments on new cars now, on American-made cars. And she's like, yeah, I know. And so when she's like, yeah, maybe we should buy a new car now. I'm like, yeah, maybe you should. You know, so think about that. So I don't know how much interest you pay on a car loan every year, but it's a lot, especially with these interest rates. But say you pay, you know, $2,000 interest on your car loan. Now you can deduct that off your taxes. That's crazy. How many car payments is that? Just from that deduction. Right. Yeah. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Mm-hmm. You want a house and property? Yeah, well, wait until Powell's no longer the Fed chair and they lower interest rates. That guy's a criminal. He did not lower interest rates just because he hates Trump. I did not know this, apparently everybody else did, but last year, Sidney Sweeney registered as a Republican here in Florida. I had no idea. Yeah, I had no idea. Did you guys know that? It was last year she registered, I guess, so she could vote for the president. I had no idea. Yeah. I wonder how she is reacting, though, to this controversy. Is she panicked about her Hollywood movie career or not? It is on, yeah, 2024. Yeah. I did not make it to American Eagle yesterday, but I'll go one day during the week. Yeah, her family are MAGA, from what I understand. But, you know, the troll Twitter mob doesn't exist anymore. The trolls are a smaller minority in our society each and every day, so. That's pretty amazing. Pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, you know, what's happened. I've talked about this a lot. When the Never Trumpers shot President Trump in Butler, especially when they tried to do it again at the golf course, but a lot of people came out of the closet as MAGA, like the gays in the 80s started coming out of the closet as gay. Conservatives started coming out of the closet after Butler. And it's happening more and more all the time. It's true. This country is much more conservative than we've ever believed because the media have an overrepresentation of the left. They always have. You know, so, yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty cool. So, if you're closeted conservative, closeted MAGA, come out of the closet. Be proud. That's the new pride movement. We got to get a ribbon for it, like a MAGA ribbon for that. Yeah. I take no medications. Nothing. Media's been checked. Yeah. Yep. You know, and I noticed there's, and I don't know if you're seeing this in our community, you know, here in South Florida, Miami, then I saw this is happening in Atlanta. This is an interesting thing about the fake news. There's a local television station that's an ABC News affiliate in Miami and has been for as long as I can remember, Channel 10 WPLG. And they have dropped ABC. They have become, they're a big station too, like one of the biggest in Miami. They've dropped their affiliation with ABC and have become an independent television station. And they have a pretty big news operation. And it's going to be all local news. They've dropped ABC totally, not just their news, but their entire primetime lineup and everything. And they said it was a cost move because ABC was upping their fees that they charge affiliates. So they just dropped them. And then I saw today a news station in Atlanta, Georgia, did the same thing. It was ABC as well. They dropped ABC as being an affiliate for them. So it's all going to be local. Their news is going to be local. No more ABC. And that Muir creep is, you know, left wing. Everything boils down to money. But there's also that people are tired of this liberal shit in the news. That's it. I mean, people, you know, people are just tired of this mainstream liberal crap in the news. And if any of you get local news, if you get Scripps News, forget about it. It's the most biased liberal stuff in our local media in this country. Liberal fatigue, Michael. That's exactly right. Liberal fatigue. And yeah, I think it's amazing. And I wonder, so I know of two affiliates that have dropped ABC as being an affiliate, which is a big deal. I wonder how many other stations are doing it around the country. I knew the one in Miami's been doing it for a while because they've been promoting it. Come July, whatever, we're no longer going to be ABC. We're going to be independent WPLG Channel 10 if you want to look it up. And they got an app. You can watch the Miami news there and stuff and see what they're doing. But they put a few videos up on YouTube. And you know how YouTube works, how you get YouTube recommendations? So this morning I went on YouTube before I came here and I got a recommendation from a video of this new ABC affiliate in Atlanta, Georgia has dropped ABC too. I thought, oh, well, that's interesting. And, you know, this liberal woke crap, you know, like there was a show that I was a big fan of the first couple years, The Rookie with Nathan Fillion. He's in the new Superman movie. He plays the fat Green Lantern. Well, I don't know why, you know, what that's about. But anyway, that show was really good. And then it got all woke, you know, got all woke. And it's not watchable anymore. That's an ABC show. I was talking yesterday, we're talking about the end of woke, you know, and woke has never been popular. It's never been popular. And we're seeing a complete rejection and of, you know, President Trump has many great accomplishments, but his takedown of the fake news media is one of his greatest accomplishments. And, you know, there's so many people like me now that are, I don't like to call myself a journalist, but I'm media because, you know, I'm a commentator. I talk about the news. I talk about the news as it's happening. But that's what people want now. That's what they want now. They don't want this liberal crap that they've been giving us, and it's a complete takedown. And the thing, though, that you have to be very careful of, and this is I was talking about this yesterday morning when I was talking about Candace Owens, Tucker Carlson, and Nick Fuentes. And the I'm not going to go through that because it's a big watch my stream from yesterday morning in this spot with a different shirt on because it was yesterday. And I go through this thing with Nick Fuentes, Tucker Carlson, and Candace that happened Thursday, Friday. And I go through that in detail. But this is, you know, remember Tulsi Gabbard, and this is something you guys got to be very, very careful of because I'm already seeing it happening. Tulsi Gabbard told Jesse Waters on Fox News Channel earlier this week because she sees everything now as a director of national intelligence. She has the highest security clearance there is. She sees everything before the president even. She said Operation Mockingbird is still in effect. It's no doubt. But what's happened with Operation Mockingbird is it's moved away from the television and newspaper people and gone after the new media. And there are people in the new media who you can't trust, who you think are, you know, regular people. And they're not. And I was talking yesterday that Tucker Carlson said that Nick Fuentes is a Fed. I was shocked to hear that. And then Tucker Carlson said his dad was in the CIA, you know. So, you know, and I go in all the details of that on yesterday's stream, so go and watch that. But Operation Mockingbird is now going after, I don't mind you taking the swipes and everything, but don't spam the chat if you don't mind. The meds guy, I heard it the first 500 times. So the Operation Mockingbird's going after different people now. You know, like, you know, and it takes different forms. A lot of people say, and I don't know this to be true, but a lot of people say the Qatar is paying Tucker and Candace Owens. Although there was a document about Tucker with that interview, but maybe that's an Operation Mockingbird type operation. They may even be behind it. So you got to be careful. Just because someone says they're new media doesn't mean they are. And when I first started to realize they were going after the new media was when Brett Cooper first came on the scene, and then I started seeing other people like this. You know, nothing personal against Brett Cooper. I don't have much interest in her either way, but I never heard of her, and I go on YouTube one day, and she's in my feed. I'm like, who is this girl? And she looked like a gamer girl at home. She had the Beats by Dre gamer headset on, and she's sitting in her chair with her leg up on her leg, and she's talking about politics and what's going on here. And who is the? And I've never heard of her. I was like, so I looked up her channel. I said, I'm not subscribed to her. Why is she being fed to me? And she had like over 1 million subscribers already, and I'm like, what? Is she like the biggest gamer ever I never heard of that just got red pilled? And then, as crazy as this, who's that? He's a nasty jerk. The guy here on YouTube, very nasty. I can't remember his name. He's the nephew of that Kurt Fatso on the Young Turks. What's his? You know what I'm talking about? Oh. I can't remember his name. You guys know who I'm talking about? His son is the Young Turks. He's the nephew of the guy from the Young Turks. What's his name? The nephew of the guy from the Young Turks. He's a nasty jerk. Liberal jerk. Hassan, yeah. Piker, yeah. He exposed Brett Cooper and I don't know how he got it, but anyway, you know, I don't know, because he's fed too by his friends. But that wasn't her house or anything. It was a set. She was in a set. Hassan, yeah. It was Brett Cooper was in a set at the Daily Wire in Nashville. It was a complete set and fake. And then she did a video showing, yeah, well, this is a set, and I have writers. And I'm like, what? And that caught me off guard. I was surprised because I'd never heard of her before. I had no idea. I didn't know she was with the Daily Wire. And I'm like, what? So I started thinking to myself, how many of these other people that I see are like this, that they're not some organic person? You know, a lot of you have been following. There are people watching this that have been following me for the over 30 years that I've been a broadcaster. So, you know, and a lot, if you have been, you've seen me since I was like a teenager doing this. So you've seen me. And so I started doing some investigating. I alluded to a little bit of this yesterday. And there are people that are conservative and liberal that do political commentary that are just like Brett Cooper and fake things with fake followings with all kinds of backings. So what's going on here is Operation Mockingbird is in, I don't know why somebody would do that. Yeah. Operation Mockingbird is now working in the influencer area. you know, and I see it and with people from time to time, and suspect it with a lot. And you got to be very careful that you're not fed, you know, propaganda. They're not wasting their time on TV news people anymore like they used to, or newspaper people. They're making, the Operation Mockingbird is now making its move to the online new media. That's why you've got to be very cautious, question everyone and everything, and look into people. I was telling you guys, there's I don't have proof of this, or I would share it with you, but I am over 95% sure that there's one big liberal that is an Operation Mockingbird deep stater. And about a year or so ago, something happened and they were replaced with a female liberal. And when that happened, when that replacement happened, it was like this. I was like, what happened? So I did some investigating and found some things out about them, and I was like, what the heck? I couldn't believe it. Big, well-known liberal. I'm not going to say who, because I don't have the definitive proof. My investigation can only go so far, but there are others like this. And, you know, because I work in this business and have done this for so long, I have a different eye and a different ear than a casual viewer, so there's some things that just alert me right away, and I do some investigations, and then you find out, you know. And so Operation Mockingbird has just moved on to some other areas, and you just got to be very, very careful. By the way, I'm not alleging that Brett Cooper is a part of that. I don't think so, but I'm saying that I was surprised when she just popped up on everyone's stream, because they did a big ad campaign, I guess, with the Daily Wire, and then I didn't know she was fake on a set when she first popped up on my screen, you know. And when I found out she was on a set, I'm like, what the heck? No spamming, please. I don't mind, you know, trolls at their questions. Well, we found out that a bunch of influencers were getting Russian money. Remember, through that the Asian Canadian conservative, Lauren, was it Chen? What was her name? The one that was putting together this network. Dave Rubin was a part of that and everything else. Remember that? Yeah, that was another big wake-up call. That's when I really started looking at people. I'm like, what the, you know. You know, see, the deep state has always been this way. Whatever the major form of communication was in its day was being monitored. I'll give you an example. A lot of people don't know this, and it seems so crazy and ridiculous, and even how did they do it? During the Second World War was really the birth of the deep state as we know it. During the Second World War, the main form of communication was telegrams. The federal government in the Second World War monitored all telegrams. I don't know how they did it with the technology they had in the day, but they did it. They monitored all telegrams during the Second World War. How'd they do it? Who the hell knows? It was the early versions of the NSA that they did it. There's a book I read about 15 years ago, maybe 20 years ago. It's about the birth of the NSA, and they talked about it at the time. If you want to look it up, I can't remember the full title because I read it so long. It's called The Something Palace. The Something Palace, and it's about the beginnings of the deep state and the NSA. If you want to do some research and find the book, it's got Palace in the title, so it's called Something Palace is the title of the book, and it's about, and I read that right in the beginning, and I was like, holy shit, how'd they do that, right? How'd they do that? But the reason they did that is because in the 1940s, the 1930s, 1940s, iron doesn't sound familiar, but it was called the Something Palace. and it's about the birth of the NSA, so it shouldn't be too hard to find. I'll if I remember, I'll try to look it up. I don't have the book anymore, but it was, but it was interesting. But the point of that is, at the time, telegrams was the way that it was the internet of its day. It's the way that even when I was a kid, calling long distance was crazy. Like, there's people here from if you're not in the United States, what country are you in? I saw somebody was in Scotland earlier. What country are you in? When I was a kid growing up, if you made an international call without your parents' permission, you were in deep doo-doo, because it was freaking expensive. It was expensive. Any you guys ever make an international call in the 70s, even the 80s? And even a long-distance call was, inside the United States, was a big deal. It was expensive. So could you imagine making an international call or it was a lot of money. In the 40s, you could make long distance calls and everything else. I could only imagine what it cost then. But so the main form of international communication, and even around the country, was telegrams. So that's why they were monitoring telegrams, right? That's why they monitored all the telegrams. The deep state monitored every single telegram during that time. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that's Gen X or older. You ever get in trouble because of the long distance phone bill? Hell yeah. Oh my goodness. Puzzle Palace, that sounds familiar. That might be it, Chris. Is that the book about the NSA? I remember the cover when I had it. I got a paperback. It had a blue cover. Puzzle Palace, that might be it. Yeah. It's a big book, but the one thing I remember about reading that book was that about the telegrams, and that just blew my mind and got me thinking. So, so the deep state has always been there. You just got to accept it. A lot of people tell me they don't have an Alexa in their house. At my house, we have an Alexa in every room. The Puzzle Palace. I just got a text from my wife. She's watching. It's called The Puzzle Palace. It's on Audible. My wife just texted me. The Puzzle Palace is that book. So if they were monitoring every single telegram during the Second World War in the United States, you can only imagine what they're doing now, right? Exactly. They're monitoring everything. So all of these people that say, I'll never have, I see people in the chat, I'll never have an Alexa in my house. We have one in every room, even in the bathroom, and it doesn't matter. They're monitoring you 12 other ways. They know everything you're doing. I mean, how many times have you can look up YouTube videos on this, of people who will talk about something they never talk about. They open up Instagram or Facebook, and all of a sudden there's ads. Great example. My wife and I, we saw a copper skillet once on QVC, and we were talking about copper skillets and copper pans. Next thing I know, my Instagram feed is filled with ads for copper cookware. I'm like, what the heck? Because your phone's listening to you all the time, right? It's listening to the Amish even have cell phones. So, the government's always monitoring everything that everyone does, and they focus in on what the main form of communication is. And if you go backwards, you can get around it. As an example, two of the people involved in the Lawfare cases that are coming up now, Bruce and Nellie Orr. Remember Bruce and Nellie Orr? They're part of the whole Lawfare against Trump in his first term. They're not as well known as some of the others, but Bruce and Nellie Orr. And if you remember, in Trump's first term, she had a short wave radio in her house. Why? Because that's what they don't monitor anymore. That's spy work. Back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, every once in a while they would arrest like an FBI agent who was giving secrets to the Russians, or they'd get a spy operation going. I remember when Reagan was president, they tore down the U.S. embassy in Russia because it was filled with so many listening devices. Remember that? And the spies used to communicate with shortwave radios. So now, but they don't. So the government was monitoring all this shortwave radio communications, but nobody uses that anymore. So Nellie Orr and Bruce Orr had a shortwave radio in their house. Who the hell were they talking to on it? That's right. They could talk freely because no one's listening to that anymore. They don't. The government doesn't. So if you use a shortwave radio, or you go back to telegrams, you get a little ... thing going on. You're not being monitored. But unless you got a telegraph at home and you got a telegraph wire, you know, and you're talking to somebody on a telegraph, everything you do is being monitored. That's just what they do. So you just got to accept that. So, you know, so there's all these people that I'm off the grid. The only way you're off the grid is if you're on an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean that has no electricity, no water, and nothing. That's it. Ham radio, yeah. But my guess is now they're probably being monitored because there's a resurgence of ham radio. You see, you can see a lot of ham radio things on YouTube and things now. Now that I've talked about it, you may get some ham radio, shortwave radio recommendations and copper skillet recommendations yourself on your devices since I've been talking about it. But if you go on, you can find videos about this on YouTube. People will do things like, okay, this is the microphones I use that I'm using now, the DJI microphone. It's plugged into my phone here. That's what this is. And people will just sit there with their phone on next to them and just say DJI microphone. It's J, I'm sorry, I said G. DJI microphone, DJI microphone. They do these things over and over again, something they would never talk about. The next thing they know, their Instagram feed is filled with ads for it. I've seen so many videos of this, of people doing this, and I've done it myself a couple times with my daughter when she was younger. But that's what it is. So you're always being monitored. Don't think you're not. You know. And there was also a new thing. You know, Dan Schiavo, that works for the president. He's always with the president. There's a story in the Gateway Pundit. I posted it on my X, Brian Craig Show on X. You guys should follow me there if you don't. Brian Craig Show on X. Every article I read, I post on my X, Brian Craig Show. He was being surveilled by the FBI in Trump's first term, before and during, right? Yeah, and he never revealed it before. Illegal surveillance. Mm-hmm. That's it. Mm-hmm. All right, well, listen, guys. If you're new to my channel, my name is Brian. This is where MAGA comes to talk. Make sure you subscribe if you're new and click that notification bell. And if you're already subscribed, like the video if you don't mind. Share on your socials. I'd appreciate that too.